Dear students, welcome to the next session on database management system, and the topic of the session is database users and administrators. At the end of the session, you will be able to explain the role of database users and the administrators in a database environment. So, the primary goal of a database system is to store and retrieve the information from and into the database. So, we will be storing new information into the database, and we should be able to retrieve the information whatever we have stored from the database. And the people who work with the database are of two types. One is a database user and the other one is database administrators. So we are going to discuss who are the database users and what are all the roles of database administrators. The first is database users. We have four different types of database users based on the way they expect to interact with the system. Each and every user of the system will have different aspects and expectations with the system, and based on that we have divided the database users into four categories. First is naive users, and then application programmers, then sophisticated users, and the specialized users. The first type of user is naive users, and they are the unsophisticated users of the database system. They'll interact with the system by invoking one of the application programs that have been written previously. As we already discussed, we have a database which stores the data, and together with that we'll have application program that will access and get our work done with the data which is stored in the database. So this data stored in the database can be accessed with the help of application programs, and the database and the application programs are tied together in a database management system. The naive users are particular kind of users who will be interacting with the database system with the help of the application programs written on that databases. The typical user interface for this naive users is the forms interface, where the user will be filling the appropriate field in the form. And these naive users may also read the reports which are generated from the databases. So as a whole, the naive users are simply the unsophisticated users who are going to simply use the system for generating reports and reading them. The next type of users are the application programmers. We know that we have application programs which run on the databases, and the computer professionals who write these application programs form the second type of database users. The application programmers can choose from many of the available tools for developing the user interfaces. One such tool, which is Rapid Application Development (RAD) tools, are the tools that can enable an application programmer to construct the forms and reports with minimal programming effort. The third type of users are the sophisticated users. These users can interact with the system without writing any programs. So without writing programs, they will be able to form their requests in the form of either the query languages like SQL or by using tools like data analytics software. These analysts who submit queries to explore the data in the databases fall into the category. They can be some of the analysts who can explore the pattern of the data which is in the database. The fourth type of database user are the specialized users. The sophisticated users who write specialized database applications that do not fall into the traditional data processing framework are called as the specialized users. The sophisticated users, these people are going to develop some applications which are not the traditional one. So they will be developing some specialized applications. The applications which are being used for this specialized users are computer aided design systems, knowledge base and expert systems, and the systems that store data with complex data types, and the environment modeling system. We know that all these applications are specialized applications which are used for specific purposes. So the fourth type of users of the database, they develop applications for all these things like computer aided design and knowledge based expert systems, environment modeling system. All these are the specialized user works. The next type of user or the role which we are going to discuss is a database administrator. So we should have a person who is having the central control over the system, who is usually called as admin. Here also, in case of database, we have a database administrator who is also called as DBA, and this is the person who is having the central control over the system, together the data, application, program, everything inside the database. One of the main reasons for using DBMS is to have a central control of both the data and the programs that access the data. So the main reason why we are going for this DBMS is to have a good control over the data stored in the database and the programs which can access the data stored. So for this we have the DBMS, and to control this DBMS we have the DBA. We have some specialized functions for DBA. One is schema definition. Schema is the design of the database, and the database administrators create the original database schema by executing a set of statements in DDL, data definition language. Using this DDL, they will be originally creating the schema at the beginning of database creation. The next function of a DBA is storage structure and access method definition. He'll define what is the storage structure that can be used for this database and the access method, that is the access privileges for any kind of user. The third function of a DBA is schema and physical organization modification. The DBA carries out the changes to the schema and the physical organization to reflect the changing needs of the organization. So the organization may have some changing needs. To reflect that, this DBA will be able to change or modify the schema and the physical organization, and also sometimes performance improvement is needed, which in turn can be done with the help of this modification. Then the fourth function of DBA is granting of authorization and for data access. DBA can regulate which part of the database the various users can access. We know that all users will not have the control over the entire database, and based on the role of the user, they'll have access to some parts of the database, and this authorization can be given only by the database administrator. The next is routine maintenance. The first is like periodically backing up the database, that is having a backup of the data in the database. So we may have some loss in the data by any of the disasters like flooding. So in those cases we must have a backup of the data. So the periodic backing up of the database can be done either onto the tapes or to the remote servers to prevent losses during these disasters. And the next is to ensure that there is enough disk space available for carrying out the normal operations, and whenever needed he has to upgrade the disk space. And he is in a position to monitor the jobs which are running on the database and to ensure that the performance is not at all degraded by very expensive tasks which are submitted by the users. As a whole, this database administrator is going to have a central control on all the things that are going to be carried out on the database. Summary: we have discussed about the database users and the administrator. We have discussed 4 different type of users, like naive users or the unsophisticated users, application programmers who are going to write the application program, and sophisticated users who are going to use or perform specialized operations using the applications, and the specialized users fall into the database users. And we have an administrator who's going to have a central control over the database, and we have discussed 5 important functions of the administrator. This is the reference textbook, Database System Concepts, 637. Thank you.